So today, firstly, thank you everyone for coming to our webinar on digital aquaculture. So this is the culmination of a project that we have done with Australian Prawn Farmers Association. My name is Nicole McDonald, I'm from CQ University, and we've also received support from the FRDC and the Queensland State Government under a grant looking at digital capability for agribusinesses. So the purpose of today's webinar is to give a bit of an introduction to the Prawn Farmers Digital Skills Hub, and we'll delve a little bit more into what that is in a few moments. We're going to focus on one of the modules that we have developed today, which is an introduction to digital aquaculture. And we're really happy to have a special guest along today, Steve, who's going to talk a little bit more in depth around some technologies for hatcheries and water quality. With anything to do with digital aquaculture, I think the sector is moving so fast, it's really important that we have a conversation not only about what we've highlighted in the module, but tips for staying up to date, as this is an ever-changing space that we're working in. Before we get started, we are actually going to be collecting some data today. So when you registered for the webinar, you may have noticed we did have a disclosure around some research that we're doing as part of this. I do want to remind you that the data that we're collecting is anonymous. We are using KP1 technology today, so I hope this works okay. Just look out for the response required icon for when you need to answer. So this should pop up on your screen, whether you're working on a computer, a laptop, or you're dialed in from a mobile phone. So without further ado, we actually are going to collect some data for about 10 questions first, some demographic data, some data around your perceptions associated with digital aquaculture, and then we'll get to the crux of today's webinar. So we're curious to know if you have actually attended or will you be attending one of the Prawn Farmers Digital Skills Hub face-to-face workshops. So we have already conducted one of these in Loganholme, and we are rolling out 2 others later this week in Mackay and Townsville. If you don't intend to attend, that's all fine, but we'd like you to give your indication whether you have attended at all. So I'm hoping that that is popping up on your screen now to respond to. If you could do that, I'll give it a few moments to do that. Is that all looking good? Yep, lovely. We'll move to our second question. We are collecting some demographic data, so we are curious what is your gender, so male, female, non-binary, or you may prefer not to say to this question. So if you could take a moment to click the response category there on your screen. Excellent. And what age group do you fall into? So we've got 18 to 25 years, 26 to 35 years, 36 to 45 years, 46 to 55, and then 55 plus in terms of our age categories. Cool. We'll just move on. What is your highest educational qualification? So you may have finished up formal education and training in year 10 and have been learning on the job. That's all great. We do want to know that. Or maybe you've gone on to do some vocational education and training, or perhaps a university qualification there. So if you could just select one of the 7 categories for which is the highest educational qualification that you've attained along your journey. We are curious where you're dialing in from today. So this is a Queensland-focused project, so we are curious to know whether you're coming from Northern Queensland, Central Queensland, or Southeast Queensland. You may be in New South Wales. We know we've got some prawn farmers in Northern New South Wales there. Or you might be from another location entirely, and you're just curious about what we've kind of developed today. So if you could pop a response in there. And we're curious how many years you have worked in agriculture or aquaculture for. If you're not working in agriculture or aquaculture, just select category 1. But otherwise, we're curious about your experience in this space. So either or, how long have you been involved, I guess, in the production of food and fibre? To our next one. Now, we've designed the hub for a number of different kind of employment categories. So we're curious to know whether you're interested in this, what sort of employment category you're fitting today. So you may be in a management position, you might be a supervisor in a technical role. If you're on a farm, you may be a farm labourer or farm hand, or you might be a seasonal worker. You might be working in education and training, or perhaps you're in an allied profession. So we would put our extension officers, our researchers, our consultants or salespeople in an allied profession. And you may not be working at all or anything to do with associated with the prawn farming industry. So we do have a category 8 there as well if you don't meet any of those other categories. If you are working in a prawn farm, we know there are a few different business structures that does affect, how we structure our roles and what kind of skills people need on farms. So we're curious to know whether you're a smaller family farm, a larger family farm, a corporate farm, or perhaps you don't work at a prawn farm at the moment. So we're on to some of our questions around skills and capabilities. So we're curious to know how strongly you agree or disagree with this statement. I'm capable of operating digital technologies, including digital devices, apps, and machinery. So this is your confidence that you can, or your perspective on your capability that you can operate digital technologies. So 1 is strongly agree, 2 agree, 3 neither agree or disagree, 4 disagree, or 5 strongly disagree. Our next attitudinal question is, I'm capable of using digital technologies and programs to integrate, analyse, and interpret data to inform decision making. So it's a very specific application of using digital technologies, and we're curious about how much you agree or disagree with this particular statement. If you could select from one of the 5 categories there, that would be great. And I am capable of solving problems that sometimes arise when using digital technologies. So I guess we're talking about troubleshooting, those kinds of things there when it comes to using digital technologies. If you could indicate whether 1, you strongly agree with that statement, or 2, agree, 3, neither agree or disagree, unsure, 4, disagree, or 5, strongly disagree, that would be great. And that's all our research questions today. We have got a couple more at the end of the webinar, but we'll swing back to them. So to get us started, I guess what we wanted to really set the tone for today's webinar is to highlight what actually is digital aquaculture. And I know we had a few SARA members register for this webinar, so we have used a definition that SARA have cited in 2017, that digital aquaculture refers to the application of techniques and technologies in sensing, data modelling, situational awareness and decision support to help the industry transform to more consistent yields across far greater scales and to capture unrealised profits. In a nutshell, it's the application of technology to improve facets or areas of the business. And we're seeing digital transformation take hold of all different sorts of industries, including aquaculture. Why is it important? So we know we've got some really tricky challenges with feeding our world in the future. Our world population is due to grow exponentially, and world hunger is predicted to increase by 10%. We know increased agriculture and aquaculture output is crucial for our food security. And that aquaculture, there is actually this huge opportunity there. It's one of the fastest growing sectors in agriculture. And especially in Queensland, we're seeing prawn farming set to increase 20 to 30-fold in the next few years. Digital agricultural aquaculture can accelerate sustainable food production, and it's crucial for the growth of the sector. So we face some really tricky challenges when needing to do more with less, and we're needing to become more focused, I guess, on that precision agriculture kind of side of things, and digital technologies can help us do that. Now, at this point, Australian aquaculture has been slow to uptake new technologies is not quite accurate, and our special guest today probably will highlight why. But generally as a whole, and this is not aquaculture, but agriculture, horticulture, all of our food and fibre production industries are having some challenges when it comes to adopting and accepting digital technologies. We know we've got some work to do there, and we know part of that work involves us making sure that we're upskilling the current workforce to be able to, work and assimilate these digital technologies into how they perform their tasks on farm. We also know that we need to get our future workforce, so that next generation coming through, ready to really embrace these new ways of working. So our project focused on, trying to contextualise exactly what digital capability is for the prawn farming industry. So if we think about digital capability, we're talking about skills and attitudes that individuals, organisations and industries need to have to make sure that they can actively participate in a current and future heavily reliant on digital resources and technologies. So past research done in national projects has actually defined digital capability to centre on 6 main areas. And this is skills and attitudes around digital literacy, technology adoption, data management, data monitoring, analysis and interpretation, digital communication and incident management. Now, those 6 kind of domains are actually quite high level. What we wanted to do is really explore what do those look like in the Queensland prawn farming industry, and what does that actually mean for the skills that we need to develop and the training resources that might actually help us do this in a contextualised way that has real world impact for the industry. So that's what we've attempted to do. We have done this by conducting research with members of the Australian Prawn Farming Association, so very much supported by them. We've conducted interviews across a number of different prawn farming businesses. We ran a national survey, really trying to identify the skills gaps that exist with regards to using digital technologies to analyse and interpret data for better decision making. And those other 5 domains as well. So digital literacy, technology, technology use. What we found in the research that these gaps were often reported on smaller farms. So we were really, I guess, cognizant of the fact that we needed to make sure that any sort of resource that we developed could be adoptable by smaller farms to really sort of upskill themselves. That equality of access was a concern. So we know that larger corporates perhaps are more readily able to upskill employees compared to smaller operations. But we wanted to make a resource that was going to be potentially useful to everyone in the industry. So no small aspirations there for us. From the research that we did, we selected 3 topics for further training. So people wanted a specific module around water quality technology. So that was going to be really key now and into the future. And that mapped quite nicely onto that technology operation digital capability. Our second priority was digitising data collection. So acknowledging that, to date, paper-based systems are very common in a number of businesses. How can we get this digitised to better collect data, analyse and interpret it and use it for decision making. And then finally, our third module was just an overall introduction to digital aquaculture. So we really wanted to focus on that digital literacy piece. You know, how do people find out this information around what is coming down the pipeline so that they can stay informed about where strategically they need to go for their businesses. So we've built out a module on that. So the Prawn Farmers Digital Skills Hub is not a course per se, but it is a training resource. So it has a number of different kind of training modules or bite-sized chunks that can be stackable to develop skills around those three main areas. The hub includes overview information, video demonstrations, and links to further resources beyond what we have created. So it is very much an entry point for people who are looking to do work in this area. And we have tried to make them sort of 10-minute chunkable pieces, acknowledging that people can be very time poor when it comes to doing this sort of stuff. And we want people to be able to tap in and tap out of it as they need. Yeah, so that's what we have created there for you. Actually, before I jump into the intro to digital aquaculture, I might just this is coming up on screen. How to log on to the Prawn Farmers Digital Skills Hub. Can you guys see that on your screen there now? The Prawn Farmers Digital Skills Hub page on the Agritech Education Extension. Lovely. What I am also going to do is at the end of the session, I'll drop the link in the chat box for you guys as well. But basically, to access it, if you go to agritecheducation.com, if you get to our homepage, go to projects and you'll see Prawn Farmers Digital Skills Hub. That will bring up this page. And if you click enroll now, it's just loading, you'll be brought to our Be Different site. So what you'll see there is it has like an overview of the course details, course structure, learning outcomes, entry requirements. If you click that how to apply and just expand that down the bottom there, it clearly has clear instructions for you to be able to access it. If you get stuck, please just get in contact with us. You should have our contact details through the emails sent out today. But yeah, so that's sort of how you can get in there to access it. And let me just minimize that back down. So when you get access to the hub, you'll see our three modules there, and module 3 that we have is Intro to Digital Aquaculture. So within this module, we have separated out into 8 different topics, just sort of defining digital aquaculture, a really important module on finding new information, staying up to date with a whole heap of different sorts of resources, newsletters, things that you can have a look at there, checking your knowledge already, and then we've tried to separate out the application of digital technologies to different sections of a prawn farming business, so looking at hatcheries, water quality, grow-out ponds and harvesting, and then of course those overall digital connectivity options where we know sometimes people are struggling just for that digital connectivity before they even consider adopting digital technologies into their farming business. So that's a brief overview on the hub and how we've got to where we're going. What I would love to do now is to introduce Steve Harrison. Steve is a member of the APFA Skills Subcommittee. He is the Training and Development Manager for TASAL, certainly one of our leaders that we look to in aquaculture. And Steve, I'm going to get you to start your part of the presentation. If you just tell me next slide when you need to move forward. Yeah. I think we'll get stuck into it.
No worries. Thank you for that, Nicole. Okay, so just a little bit of background about me. As Nicole said, I'm just recently been appointed as the Training and Development Manager for TASAL's Prawn Division. Prior to that, I had over 20 years experience as an aquaculture trainer and educator in Tasmania, mainly with Atlantic salmon, but also blue mussels and Pacific oysters. And I guess my first exposure to the power of digital technology in aquaculture actually came in the early 2000s, where I walked into the reception area of one of our salmon companies, and I commented to the receptionist, Gina. I said, Gina, you've got a really nice screensaver on your computer. And she just looked at me with this look of disdain, because what she actually had was a software platform called Vicas, which was based on cameras in the sea cages some 400 metres away, and she was clicking on each individual fish, and this software package would actually calculate the weight and length of the fish so that they could monitor their growth rates. And that was back in the early 2000s. So the bit where Nicole said aquaculture has been slow to take up technology, probably it has in lots of operations, but certainly in some operations such as the big sectors such as salmon and tuna, for example, technology has been around, and digital technology, for quite a while. The building you can see behind me in that picture there was the Huon Valley Trade Training Centre. So to train young people for the world of technology, we actually invested heavily into the same equipment. So we had remote sensing monitoring equipment. The students were able to log in and check the water quality from home, which was great when we were locked down with COVID. And we also experimented with the use of ROVs, remote operated vehicles, for underwater monitoring. And as a result of that, I was instrumental in the working party to develop 2 skill sets for the seafood industry training package around aquabotics and remote technology. So there is accredited training available to back this work that the Prawn Farmers Association and CQU have done with the Digital Skills Hub. So I guess next slide, please, Nicole. So we're going to be focusing on digital technology for water quality, specifically for ponds, not for hatcheries as the original slide indicated, but so apologies about that if people were expecting me to talk about hatcheries. I'm mainly going to be talking about innovations in pond aquaculture. So next slide, please, Nicole. So I guess the first big thing which is coming along is remote sensing. The water quality parameters that we're required to take is very labour intensive, and as farms get bigger, with our farm's got over 200 ponds, to physically walk around and use even the most high-tech of equipment to monitor the water in each pond is just not, it's too labour intensive, and it's expensive. And every time you have to do something, you are obviously the risk of making errors. So one of the things that is being implemented in a number of farms is the use of technology such as the YSI EXO probe systems in each of the ponds, and then being monitored remotely from a central point. And that way the data can be available more readily, consistently, and can be mapped very accurately. Next slide, please, Nicole. One of the other things that we can do with this is remote monitoring of dissolved oxygen. Obviously, dissolved oxygen is the most critical water quality parameter for the survival of our prawns. So if we can know what that is at any moment of the day, we can make those decisions about aeration, for example. In fact, we can actually automate those decisions. So rather than having paddle wheels activating and running all the time, they can be turned on and off in terms of what the actual DO requirements are in the ponds. And so not only you get more efficient production, but you can also save on resources and use of power for powering paddle wheels, for example. So next slide, please. So now we're going to focus on digital technology in grow-out ponds. We're going to look at automatic and remote feeding and look at where that sort of came from, and look at the benefits for your business, and then look at some other technologies as well. So next slide, please, Nicole. So feeding is obviously the most single biggest cost in aquaculture, whether it's prawn farming, salmon farming, or whatever, except for perhaps some less intensive farming such as might be carried out in Southeast Asia. Feed is the biggest cost, and therefore the biggest cost is you want to minimise that cost as much as possible and maximise your economic, get your best economic FCR as possible. So any wasted feed is not only environmentally bad, it costs you money, and it looks like that slide has disappeared. Oh, here we go, we're back again. And so automatic feeders have been one of the first things that's been automated in aquaculture and have been used in finfish farming for a very long time. AQ1 systems is the system which we currently use here at Tassal, and AQ1 systems have been used internationally for quite some time, and ironically not so much in Australia, being that AQ1 Systems is actually an Australian company based out of Hobart in Tasmania. So essentially, the AQ1 system works on acoustic technology. So there are hydrophones in the ponds, and the hydrophones are listening for the sounds of the prawns actually feeding, and in response, then they dose the ponds with feed. They listen again to the prawns eating the feed when that feed has been consumed to the algorithm controlled by the computer within the feeder. Then they'll feed out some more. And you can actually link all these things together and move towards remote feeding as well. So for an example of where remote feeding came from, I guess we could look at the next slide and play the video for that one. Or actually, before we play the video, so this is a video of Tassal's remote centrally controlled feed centre in Hobart for our salmon farms. This video was made in 2018, and it was our first foray into remote feeding, and it'll give you an indication of where technology can take you.
My name is Tim Shepherd. I'm the feed centre manager at Tassal. Now feeding's controlled centrally from the Hobart CBD, and we have 11 feed technicians per shift controlling feeding of up to 19 farms. It's a collaborative environment where the feed technicians can share information as opposed to sitting on a feed barge by themselves for most of the day. They receive video footage real time of each pen, and also combined with that is live information on temperature and also oxygen trends, which we'll utilise when feeding the fish.
The information that we get provided with in terms of dissolved oxygen and the temperatures and like the depth of the camera is also really useful. It's completely different for me. I'm used to watching fish above instead of below. So
we all think it's a lot easier to feed from, the centralised area, just for the fact that, you just concentrate on your job. You just have to worry about the fish and how they're going and how they're feeding, and just ability to move them around. It's awesome.
So you can see there that the technology for that feed centre is based upon camera technology. Then the latest developments in this is actually using artificial intelligence with the cameras, so that you might have noticed the various different substances falling through the water. Well, the AI will be able to allow the camera to determine which one of those is a feed pellet, an uneaten feed pellet, and which one of those may well be a piece of fish feces. Next slide, please, Nicole.
My name is...
And just before we play this video, Tim Shepherd in the previous video was the feed centre manager in Hobart, and Tim is now with us with our prawn operations. So he's transitioned here up to Proserpine, Queensland, and he's now our senior manager for technical operations. And just as a little aside, the Clarissa, who was featured in that previous video, was actually one of my former aquaculture students. So it's why it's important that young people get skilled in these new technologies, because this is the environment that they need to work in. So this next video shows how we've taken that technology from the field of salmon and brought it into the field of prawns. This is one of our corporate videos. It's available on YouTube if you want to check it out. So if we could play that, please, Nicole.
The Tassal Group have been leaders in aquaculture for over 30 years and are synonymous with high-quality, sustainable aquaculture. As seafood experts, we're excited to bring our innovative salmon farming and sustainable aquaculture learnings to revolutionise the prawn farming industry with our new brand, Tropico. We have invested in state-of-the-art technology and farming equipment to produce only the highest quality prawns. We control the whole supply chain process, from sourcing the best brood stock through to our breeding and farming processes, all on site at our own farms. We have one of the most advanced end-to-end supply chain and farming processes, which is monitored using real-time environmental data and leading-edge automated farm control systems. To harvest the perfect prawn, our innovations team have installed sophisticated smart farming technology, which uses live sensory data and systemised prawn feed tracking to maximise prawn growth. All our processes are monitored through our leading quality control systems. It's all about those finer details.
So the video ends there with a shot of our prawn control room from one of our monitoring stations. We have real-time water quality monitoring for dissolved oxygen, temperature and pH feeding into the control room, and the control room also controls our remote and automatic feeders. In fact, every one of our prawns at any one of our 3 farms, from Mission Beach in the north through to Yamba in New South Wales to the south, are fed from our control room in Proserpine. I saw on the Salmon News newsletter the other day that there is a salmon company in Norway, which is also operating in New Brunswick and British Columbia in Canada, and they're proposing to feed all of their salmon in Norway and in Canada from one control room based in Norway. So it's not only interstate, but it can be international. The power of the technology is not limited by distance. One of the benefits of the automatic and remote feeding is, as I said, is that reduction in feed conversion ratio. And in this last season gone is the first season where we've been fully operational with our remote feeding, and we've actually reduced our SCR by 25% in this 1 year. So it's got savings for you in your business as well as savings for you in your environmental output. Next slide, please. So one of the other developments in this technological field is the use of drones, aerial drones, and I know APFA have had a trial project with, I know Matt West from Australian Prawn Farms was involved with the trial project with aerial drones. We're doing the same here on our farm. One of the potential uses for drone technology is actually in monitoring the algal populations of the various ponds, and are determined by colour identification as to which algal species might be dominant, particularly in trying to make sure that we have less impact from those bad algae that we don't want and maximise impact from the good ones that we do want. There's also been developments in underwater drones, which are more commonly known as ROVs, remotely operated vehicles. They're able to measure water quality conditions, not so much in prawn farms, because of the fact that they are optically controlled, but certainly in finfish farms and clearwater farms, there's a huge uptake of ROVs. And I know from our operations in Tasmania, all of our environmental monitoring is now done by ROVs, and for some of the other companies, all of our net cleaning as well is done by ROVs, and many of the jobs previously done by human beings having to dive potentially down to 30 metres, which is workplace health and safety risk, are now being done by ROVs. So the uptake is very powerful. So next slide, please. So now we might consider if you haven't been motivated already, what are some of the things that might motivate you to use this digital skills hub to find out more about digital technology and potentially introduce more technology onto your farm. So next slide. All of us would be aware of the labour challenges that we're currently facing, particularly here in Queensland. And so challenges of labour means we move towards automation. And in fact, some of our automated tasks we're doing is not so much that we want to actually reduce our number of employees. because simply we can't find people to do these tasks. So we're having to automate them because the people in the workforce are simply not there. So automation can replace some jobs, but it'll actually create new ones and change and value add the other jobs that are existing. One of the benefits we found with our feeding technology in salmon is that our older workers who might get to the stage where they're physically not able to get in and out of some of our vessels and climb up onto some of our older feed barges, we can now actually retain them. So we can retain them essentially until retirement and maximise their many years of knowledge in feeding, whereas otherwise we might have had to replace them with younger people who could physically do the tasks. The other side of it is that, as shown by the example of Clarissa, that people who are coming into the industry, into our entry-level jobs, they're going to need to be much more technologically aware. Whether that's at your basic farm hand, they need to be aware of the technology that are in the pond. So if they're wading into ponds to conduct partial harvest, for example, they need to be aware of the acoustic hydrophones. They need to be aware of the monitoring probes. They may well be responsible for cleaning and maintaining those probes, so they need to be aware of how that technology operates and how to accurately do that without damaging it. We have found in the first year people have tripped over our hydrophone probes, and so we've had to operate or introduce new means to make sure that our probes are more protected, because people are simply not aware of how delicate they actually are. So it's a real driver for your workforce. Next slide. So as Nicole said at the beginning, digital aquaculture is the application of technology to improve your business. Clearly, technology can improve your efficiency, improve your data accuracy. That can lead to quicker and better decision making, and ultimately means that it makes our jobs easy to do and it makes your business more profitable. And we've looked at, from our experience, the cost of implementing some of this technology is not negligible. There certainly is a cost, but the amount that we've been able to recover from the use of that technology in terms of profits for the business are more than offsetting the cost of the equipment in the first place. So I certainly encourage you to get on this digital bandwagon if you're not already with us. Next slide, please. So how can you find new information about this digital technology? Well, the first thing is if you're not already a member, to join the Australian Prawn Farmers Association. Some other things you could do, you could subscribe to the Global Seafood Alliance newsletter. That brings you information about technology from around the world. And then I found this amazing site called Agritech Finder, which has got this huge details of all this technology available for agriculture in Australia, but there's no aquaculture information on it yet. So let's make sure we get some up there. So that's all from me. If you want to find out anything more, please get in touch, and I'll hand back now to Nicole.
Thanks so much, Steve. I learnt heaps just listening to you there, and I think my big takeaways were digital technology can make our jobs safer, it can make our jobs easier. There's those implications for the workforce going forward. Yeah, and when you said, the cost is negligible, I guess the question might be not just can you afford to do it, but can you afford not to do it? So this is where the future of work is going, and we just really want to make sure that we're supporting people to start that journey into learning more about what is possible and where you can take your business in the future. And so I guess that's where we're really looking at this Digital Skills Hub being a resource for people. So before we wrap up, we have a couple more questions to ask using the KP1 system. So again, your responses are anonymous. It's like 4 questions left. And then we might have time for some questions from the audience. I'm not too sure, but here we go. So just from what we've kind of discussed today, we're keen to know whether you think that Prawn Farmers Digital Skills Hub will actually help you to learn more about, how to go back. I might just have to stop sharing for 1 second. Sorry about this, people. Back. Cool. Try that again. Is that going forward? Okay, yeah, so we're keen to know whether you think what we've showcased today with the Prawn Farmers Digital Skills Hub will actually help you to learn more about digital aquaculture. So if you could just indicate your level of agreement with that. So whether you strongly agree that you think it will help you to learn more about digital aquaculture or you strongly disagree, we're really keen to get your thoughts there. So I'll give a few minutes for people to give us a response. And based on what we've kind of showcased too, we wanted to know what are your intentions to access or use the Australian Prawn Farmers Association Prawn Farmers Digital Skills Hub. Do you think you'll try and access it immediately after the webinar? Do you think sometime this week? Do you plan to access it within the next month or sometime this year, or you do not plan to access this at all? We did skip over accessing the hub at the start. So once we've finished the slides, I will make sure I put that link into the chat for people, again, where to go to access the hub. Yeah, we're hoping you get on there, have a look around, click around. Ultimately, it is a tool, so it is up to you to work out how you'd like to use it. But we certainly see a lot of applicability for it in the workforce or in education and training systems. Our next question. Do you think you will need more assistance to access, navigate and use the Australian Prawn Farmers Association Prawn Farmers Digital Skills Hub? So have we given you enough that you think you can go do it? We know, we do want to know whether you think this is going to be easy to use in terms of access. So if you could indicate whether you think you'll need further support or not, that will give us some feedback to know what we need to do to make sure going forward that this is accessible for people. So we've got 4 categories there. So if you could just give us an indication of whether you do require further support or assistance. And then just lastly, Australian Prawn Farmers Association actively promote and demonstrate the value of digital technologies. So supplies information through fact sheets and workshops, outlines the benefit and costs of new technologies. How much do you agree with that statement? Seeking University are conducting this research, and you are fully anonymous, but we are really keen to let our partner organisation, the lead on this project, Australian Prawn Farmers Association, know a little bit more about how the industry perceives their support of the industry. We're hoping this project changes that, but yeah, if you could indicate whether you strongly agree, neither agree or disagree or strongly agree with that statement, that would give us some valuable feedback as well. That's everything from the presentation today. So what I may do is just stop sharing now to bring us all up on the screen in the usual webinar mode. Lovely. The links for the hub is in the chat there as well. So if you can click on that, you should be able to see it. If you would like to ask a question, please pop it into the chat or feel free to unmute yourself as well. We are keen to hear from you. If you don't have any questions at the moment, please just feel free to contact us. I'll drop our email address in the chat as well. Well, we're not getting any hands up there, so, or any other questions in the chat. So what we might do is we'll wrap this up today, but very keen to hear from anyone what your thoughts are on this. Steve has dropped his contact email in the chat there as well. Steve, thank you so much for your contribution today. It was wonderful to hear from you, you know, what Tassal is doing and going forward, and certainly seeing, you know, that tropical, what's the company called again, Steve?
Tropico.
Tropico,
Yeah, that's our prawn brand. It's available in both Woolworths and Coles. I'm pretty sure that you can buy the packaged frozen product at Woolworths, and the fresh product in Coles is often our product. So,
yep. Well,
but at the deli, it's hard to tell where it comes from. But,
yeah, look,
I
don't.
do.
As long as it's got that Australian prawns on it, that's what I'm looking for when I go shopping for my prawns. But certainly seeing that video of all the technology involved in that farming system, you can see how that sends a really powerful message to consumers about the sustainability of the industry coming into the future as well, which is just wonderful to see. Lovely. Well, thank you all for today. Get in touch if you have questions or queries, and I'm going to end the meeting now. So thank you so much. We'll see you later.